There's an infinite number of monkeys out here who want to talk to us about this trip to Hamlet they worked out.
Welcome to Create and Resonate. Today's podcast is with Steve Davis. Now, the reason I've asked Steve on is because not only is he a sublime copywriter and marketer, the copy that he writes is renowned throughout Adelaide and South Australia as just the best. He is the copywriter's copywriter. And also because his copy is so good that we all use Claude 3.5 Sonnet as our writing tool, except for business stuff, which is probably ChatGPT. But the copy that Steve creates is just so much better than either of them, even Claude 3.5 Sonnet, just way above. So that's the background to Steve. And Steve and I have known each other since 2004, when we both became heavily involved with social media in Australia. And so I thought it was natural to bring Steve on because he's got a new writing project on, a personal writing project with a character called Murray. So Steve, would you like to A, introduce yourself, B, more importantly, talk about Murray and where the idea for Murray came from?
Wow. Okay, I'll get a stiff neck from looking at how high you've set the bar, so thank you for that. Murray. So look, he has evolved because of the journey I've been taking into stand-up comedy, which started about 5 or 6 years ago, where I did some standard stand-up, but soon found that what really attracted me was seeing a couple of comedians who did character work. And I did a lot of theatre in my younger days and some improvised theatre. And I thought, oh, that's what I'd like to do. So I did a show in one of the fringes with Becky Blake, who in Adelaide in South Australia is quite renowned for her singing in particular, but she also is very funny. And we did a show called Innuendo Everywhere, which is about an hour or so of skits with different characters. And one of the characters I made was Professor Sebastian Longsword, who ran the fictitious MBA School of MBA Credentials, an MBA being a Master of Business Administration. And that was fun, and I thought, no, there's more here to it, because I became increasingly aware of how shallow many MBAs are becoming in their race to be shorter and shorter, so that business people will hand over the 12 grand and get fast track so they've got a degree. And so the professor just took that to an absurd level and had a show called the Lunchtime MBA, where people came, sat down for lunch, drank a lot of red wine, the professor prattled on, and everyone left with a signed parchment. They had their degree. And that was great fun. But this new character, Murray, has evolved in a slightly different way. I went up to Coober, which is right in the outback of Australia. So just think red sand and dirt, very little vegetation, blue sky, sun beating down. I went there, and on the way in, when we got internet back, I thought, I wonder if there are any songs about Coober. So on Spotify, we dialed it up, and sure enough, there were a few, but one that got into my ears was by John Williamson. And it was that if you wanted to do a classically stereotypical country song, Australian country song, this was it. You know, Coober on the long dusty road. That's not how it goes, but it's that style. And when I got back, I was in the car with my daughter, and I said, I reckon there's a character here. I reckon there's a comedy character of this wandering Australian country singer who earnestly writes songs that are just terrible, that are just cheesy. And so that was when the seed was planted, that there's something here, this character. And then I crossed paths with Rick Price, who's had a number of big number one hits in Australia and around the world. He's based in Nashville now. And I've been working with him and a small group, writing some songs. And because I thought if I'm going to do this, I want to be able to write them and be able to at least sing them if I do a stage show. And out of that, I just realized that to get into this character, one method would be to put all that on pause and write Murray's autobiography first. Because when you do a comedy character or any character, in a TV network show like Neighbours, they would have a Bible, all of the backstory. I had that for the professor, but I wanted to take it further. And so that's what's led me onto this pathway of writing an autobiography. Well, I've never written a novel. And so I just remembered someone saying, or probably quite a few people saying, who are published authors, that for your first book in particular, working with material that you're familiar with is a great head start. And so I lived not far from Adelaide in a town called Murray Bridge, where there was a radio station, 5MU. See, when I was about 12 years old, I got it into my head that that's all I wanted to do. And nobody could talk me out of it. Nobody. Parents, teachers, they tried. But they said, you should be doing this and more. And I said, no, that's what I want to do. And in fact, I remember in year 11, one teacher was so exasperated because we had to write down the 3 jobs that we wanted to one day do so they could help with their career guidance. And I just wrote radio announcer, radio announcer, radio announcer. No! I said, look, there's nothing else. You've got to have 3 different ones, they said. So I went, okay. I wrote down President of the USA, NASA astronaut, radio announcer. Satisfied? No, it's hard work, and getting all that makeup off again at the end of the day, I've got orange everywhere. So anyway, so that's where am I? Oh yeah, so after school, a couple of quick little jobs, and then by doing some radio training, an opportunity came up in Murray Bridge, about an hour away from my hometown. It's a country town / city. And when I was thinking of what to call my character, I had this weird idea that what if he lived in Murray Bridge, but his actual name was Murray Bridge? Because Murray is such a Australian country singer a name, but how fair dinkum would you be to actually be named after a town, which itself is just named after the fact that there's a bridge that goes over the Murray in this town? And I thought, well, how do I make this conspire to take place? Well, I was thinking about his parents, and his dad, whose name is Hank Williams, as it turns out, is a lovely guy. He's a roadie for a lot of traveling country acts from the 1960s, 70s, 80s. This book takes place in the 80s and 90s. He had one job at the hospital. Patsy's in there giving birth. His job is to fill in the form for the birth registration, and he mixes up and misreads the child's name for place of birth. And so he writes in there Murray Bridge. And then because he's a larrikin and he covers his tracks and he sees them actually quite funny, he just takes little Murray and teaches Murray that how amazing it is that there's a town named after you, son. Not everyone gets this. And he's got a story that does the rounds whenever he gets the chance. People love it. His mum, Patsy, runs a diner in Murray Bridge. But that was the main reason to do that. In the back of my mind also, with my little marketing hat on from my day job, I thought, I know enough people there, I'm connected to the station of 5MU, that if there was a character out of nowhere who was launching themselves into the Adelaide Fringe or somewhere, it wouldn't be too hard to whip up some support and get some traction, which could then seed attraction elsewhere. And so I went boots and all in with Murray Bridge. That's his name. He lives with it. He had a tortured upbringing for just the comedy that his dad in particular enjoyed. And it grows from there. Well, that is, you're spot on. The first paragraph, the first sentence, that was easy because it just flew from me, because it was my the idea. I'm just looking for it now because I did send it to my parents for them to actually have a little look. And if I can just find this here we go. I'll just read you the first line and you'll have a sense of how that wouldn't have taken much. It gave my dad a bit of a heart attack when he read it, because the opening line is, "I'll always be grateful my dad was hopeless with attention to detail." And so there it is in the hospital. His stuff's up. And then I thought, okay, well, now what? And so I had to reflect deeply. I didn't have his dad's name at that point. I knew Murray's going to be a country singer, so Murray Bridge. I got Hank Williams. I thought, oh, Hank and Patsy could be his wife, Patsy Cline. But without ever going obvious, it just happens. If anyone sees it, they'll laugh, but we don't make a big thing of it. And his dad's a roadie. His mum runs that diner. What other people don't realize. So what I'm trying to go for here in building this world is I actually found it easier to work up what my style would be. And I landed on a blend between magical realism, because I loved Peter Carey's novels when I grew up. The Fat Man in History collection of short stories was amazing. But then books like Bliss, Oscar and Lucinda, just beautiful. And so magical realism means you want things to be rooted in reality, but whimsy can still take place. So there's that. And then I've always loved Woody Allen's prose. And he seems to finish almost every sentence with a barbed bit of self-deprecation that I just find delicious. So that was the style. And then I was able to weave that into the characters themselves and build the world. And once that happened, because here's the little thing, Don Dunstan, a former Premier of South Australia, quite a controversial Premier, much loved by many and equally hated by others.